I think just to set some context, right? Smart Tech is a small business firm as well. And my background is that I come from a family of lawyers, doctors, professionals, engineers, but no entrepreneurs. So I'm the first entrepreneur. And because of that, much of my learning was on the job and took me a few years. What I'm here to do is, to build a network, but also to share and hopefully accelerate your time to that awareness, and speed to market. So what you'll find is as we go through this, I'll use a lot of my personal and smart tech examples. So let me start off with what do we do at Smart Tech, right? So we work with enterprises, which could be Fortune 500. We work with small, medium businesses in their strategy planning. And what that means is any company could have one of three strategy, right? One is you are going to market wanting to recognize revenue. The second is you're looking for stability, right? You want to stabilize your operations. You want to stabilize your market share. And the third, of course, is growth. As you look at that, you set targets and goals. And so then we help you convert that into a plan, an overall plan. You want to earn, so for example, one of our nonprofits is targeting donations to the tune of $1 to $2 million. That's great, but what does that mean? Is it over 1 year, 2 year? Is it over a shorter period of time? And what does that mean when you look at it to what things you have to do, what type of events, what type of reach out, what's your market, and then bring it down to the level of tasks per day that help you build a plan. Post that, we have platforms that help you execute. So if you're going to an event and tracking your costs, customers reach out, we can set you up for as little as $200 a month, or we can run that for you for a few additional dollars a month. So that's the difference between execution and managed services. Now, having said that, let me also set some additional context. I always get asked this question: how can you work with companies that are, $1 billion in revenue, and also, small, medium, or entrepreneurs starting off? The answer to that is very simple, right? No matter what size you are, no matter what vertical or business you are, there are basically 9 building blocks in your business model. And this is sort of the model that was first published in 2005 by Alexander Osterwald. And a lot of you will be familiar with this as well. So, that covers customer segments, customer personas. How do you engage? What channels do you use? Value propositions, activities you need to perform, resources, key partners. We covered the customer relationship and customer segments in the prior workshop. And, Travis can provide like the session is up on the website, so you're welcome to go through that. Today, we're going to cover cost structure and revenue streams. So those will be our focus today. Now, when you're building your business, generally your focus could be either cost based or value based, right? So, for what that means is, I want to hit a certain margin. I'm going to keep my costs down. I often talk about the example where we did a 10-week project. The client ran out of budget. We gave him additional 3 weeks as non-billable. In the long run, what that ended up doing is actually getting us a project from another client that was about 500,000 in the client lifetime value. So, whatever your focus is, and I always say that don't necessarily go one or the other, build a hybrid. Whatever your focus is, make sure that you provide that value to the client, whether your CLV is $500 in total from the client or 500,000. You want to make sure that they recognize and are able to provide you good feedback. So here's where cost and revenue, why is that important? At a very basic level, right? Revenue is money coming in, cost is money going out for your expenses, and overall, what you get from it is your gross profit. And then part of it you're going to either put back in the business or distribute it to the owners. This is where we need to sort of understand the different types of costs, how we can be efficient operationally, and the different revenue streams and how we can maximize on them. So let's first talk about the types of costs. People generally talk about fixed costs and variable costs. So fixed costs are costs you would have to incur on a regular basis. So salaries, you may be renting an office, you may need to invest in equipment, you may need to invest in computers, laptop, you may need to invest in either manufacturing equipment if you are a product company, or you may be paying for getting your product manufactured. For us, for example, for insurance, based on the size of the client, we need really high insurance coverage, especially when we work with the bigger companies. So that's a cost. Digital, having a presence there, right? Variable costs are costs that fluctuate up and down. They're not necessary. So cost of goods, based on what quantity you produce, or how much marketing and promotions you do, what discounts you offer. If you have salespeople and you're paying commission, if your shipping costs, if you are traveling for marketing or client connects, and then obviously any transactional fee, right? Based on what system you use to collect payments. There may be other bank charges. So those are primarily that everybody talks about. The others that I like to call out are customer costs. In the session prior, we talked about customer acquisition costs. What does it take to acquire a customer, whether it's marketing, whether it's time spent, whether it's discounts you're providing to them? Customer retention costs. So always know that the customer retention costs are so much lower than customer acquisition costs. And so going after a new customer, but in our focus on revenue, we sometimes do not focus on what activities we are performing to manage customer churn, to manage customer retention. We'll talk about that. And for me, the biggest thing that my team will tell you we focus on is net promoter, right? What does it take to have the client have a good perception of your work and represent you positively when you're not there? So the net promoter cost, right? And sometimes it could mean offering 3 weeks non-billable work on a 10-week project, right? 30% cut on the profit, but then in the long run, 4 years later, it led us to have a 500,000 CLV from a customer that they referred us to. The other customer costs are customer training and onboarding. Sometimes customers are high-touch customers. They require a lot more hand-holding. Other customers are low-touch. So you've got to adjust accordingly, but plan. Why are these all important? Because these are what feed into your planning for, what volume of products you need, how you price your products or services. And then there are soft costs. Soft costs, as entrepreneurs or small businesses, you may spend time running invoicing, you may spend time running payroll, the team may spend time doing product enhancements. Those are costs that are not necessarily always accounting for the development costs. So, right here, right now, I'm here connecting with new people, working and collaborating with CSUF. So that's also, part of the time that you may spend. So those are what I call soft costs. When you bring on, I started working as an independent. I started SmartTech in 2007. My first resource for the company was hired in 2014 because my thought wasn't necessarily to build out a company. I just wanted to be responsible for what I was doing and recognize the revenue as an individual contractor. But bringing on new resources meant I have to spend time onboarding, and that's an ongoing process. Uh, soft costs is you may do this onboarding manually. Hard costs is you might have a platform that you may leverage. And if you start to build those processes at the start, that time you spend on onboarding new because you're doing everything manually is impacted, right? Now, there are strategies to mitigate your costs. So, for example, about maybe 10 years, 15 years ago, my strategy was let's hire people, let's expand the company, let's grow. Well, guess what? If you add to your employee base, you are adding to your fixed costs. What I've done since is I have built a very strong network of contractors. So, what I've done is I have a very specific core team that understands customer data, product data, supplier data, platform, strategy, planning. And then as our projects scale up, we bring in our contractors from the network to do the work, which means that the margins on return may be lower, but that's a strategy to think about, right? Another example is if you need somebody to do some of the documentation, you may hire somebody offshore, you may actually work with the contractor, you may bring in an intern. But excuse me, as the company grows, you may bring in a marketing person, a data person. So shifting fixed costs initially to variable, managing your marketing budget, so that it's lower initially, and then as you grow, you expand. So my philosophy is whatever we earn this year is next year's marketing budget. So we are very aligned to the planned budget. Building process frameworks. So, from that perspective, not just doing things manually. We are here, we will share a link, we will capture your information. If you like to sign up for free one-on-one sessions and free sign up for our system, but I'll bring up a link. It's a form that goes into our system that generates reports. So we are not necessarily doing this on Excel or manually and then having to spend 3-4 hours to generate the reports. We built a process, and that process works. So think about that, because as an entrepreneur, initially you're thinking about your cost and your budget spend, and one worried about, can I afford $200 a month for this? But in the long run, you're not spending like 4, 6, 8 hours, in a month, or 10 hours in a month doing this manually. Plus, downstream, it helps with onboarding. So somebody new comes in, hey, here's the process, here's the system. Let me show you how it's done, transition, and then they can come back to you for questions. The other is building economies of scale and building economies of scope. What that means is if you are producing a product, can you produce it in a larger quantity? Work through that. You will find companies like Amazon, if you're ordering multiple things, they're like, hey, can you, even though you're a Prime member, can I ship it in one box? Because they're managing the shipping costs as well, right? So economies of scale, the scope is where if you have, for example, similar products, can you prepare them, manage time effectively? So a lot of what you're seeing today is from workshops done prior. It's from client webinars. It's from our marketing decks. So I didn't necessarily create this from scratch for this session, which meant I could effectively manage my time. So now let's talk about some key cost metrics. And like JJ said, there are KPIs galore, right? But as an entrepreneur, you are pressed for time, trying to maximize. So some of the KPIs we'll talk about today are actually focused on helping you streamline processes, optimize operations, track your business, and what I call help you evolve, rinse, and repeat. Meaning, what you've put in place, understand where you are. Are you on target? Are you ahead? Are you behind? And then realign as needed to emphasize what's working well and to realign what you need to change. The first one is break even point. Break even point is when your revenue is the same as your cost, meaning there is absolutely no profit coming into the company. So I would say, like most people will tell you, hey, if you hit 85%, that's fine. I actually say it is possible to make profit the first year. It is possible if you track your metrics to actually bring in income. And so this is where you need to sort of say, what's my cost? Spend time understanding your cost, spend time making sure your cost structures are built well. And then we talk about revenue opportunities later on. Make sure that you're targeting to be higher than your break even point. Why is this important? Break even is important because if you are an entrepreneur or a startup looking for funding, your investors are going to want to know what is your time to profitability. Is it 1 year, 2 year, 5 year? If you are able to present a model that actually shows you profitable starting off, that's really good win and gets investors engaged. Pricing of your product. If you know your cost structures and you figure out, what revenue you want to achieve, what profit you want to achieve, it will allow you to set your pricing for the product. Right? Just sort of putting a business plan together. So when you look at your cost structures, focus on making sure you're not just negative. Your break even is, not just your first year or a couple of years, you're not just trying to break even. Look at your costs, look at your revenue streams, and then look at how you can do more than break even. Next, we talk about gross profit margin, right? I think everybody's clear on what gross profit is. It's the difference between your revenue and your cost. And the gross profit is generally expressed as dollars. The margin is expressed as a percentage. So basically, that is, are you looking to make 10%, 20%? A little bit of recommended due diligence is required. So based on your competitors, based on the industry you're in, based on the product or service. So I'll give you an example. If I'm doing standard travel, the margin is about 5%. But if I'm doing luxury travel, the margin is 20%. In technology, in financial services, the average recommended margin is about 20 to 30%. So every industry has sort of a different, acceptable or recognized margin. So understand that, understand the market you're in, because sometimes you may want to be under your competitor as you're trying to build a market share. So that's one. I often, and I think Victor's on this call too, I often use the example of his products where he's got these snacks that are, health conscious snacks that are gluten, dairy free, and for people that are conscious about their health. Well, He can sell it at Costco, he can sell it at Whole Foods. They are completely different pricing structures, right? So this is where you've got to look and say, what is my revenue stream? How am I pricing it, and work through that? Because if he's selling it at Costco, even though the pricing is lower, the volume will bring in substantial turnaround, right? But even like, for example, if you compare goods at Macy's and Nordstrom, you'll find sometimes the same product is priced differently. So when you look at your profit planning, you can look at the pricing and you can do some dynamic pricing. Cost performance index, right? This is one of the metrics that's what was your earned value and what is your actual cost. It helps you track the CPI, right? If it's under one, then obviously you need to rethink, because your cost may be too high versus what planned value you were trying to get. If it's above one, right, that's always good. If it's, 0.5 or less, then you seriously need to realign your costs and pricing strategy to get that focus. There's also a similar metric called schedule performance index. So, for example, if you're doing a specific project and you're looking to execute it, there it measures like, what had you planned to spend by this time? Are you on target for your budget versus your timeline? So as entrepreneurs, one of our challenges often is that we don't necessarily have somebody keeping us on track. We are driving the business. We are it. So, as far as follow ups, as far as, if your goal is to launch your service or product in 6 months, 1 month into it, have you hit all your targets? How do you track? What was the plan? Where are you in performance versus the plan? So, this is one of those that you have to constantly step back and reassess. And there may be some realignments. Maybe you've realized that to build a relationship with an organization like Costco, it takes you longer. For our enterprise clients, the pipeline conversion takes longer, right? When we are building a new product, we are rolling out to our customers, so small enterprise business, it may take us longer because there are lessons learned. So those you may need to account for, but it's okay to readjust. But at the same time, it's important to know where you are at with your actual execution, whether it's cost or schedule, against your plan. The other is average revenue per account. So, this comes into where, what are you bringing in? What is your cost for that account? What are you bringing in as revenue? Are they aligning? And we're looking at an average. So, there may be variants where some accounts, like I said, are high touch, others are low touch. But it's also where you have to keep in mind things like, if you did a product and you are doing a B2C, like a business to consumer, you could offer a subscription model and see if, like, you build recurring revenue, increase your revenue versus a one time. So there are ways to think about how to leverage that. And again, this is where business insights coming from data, coming from dashboard, becomes key to work through. If in the same type of client, one client is higher revenue versus the other, you may want to see what's working there and how you can replicate it to increase your revenue or find an alternate revenue stream with the second client as well. So again, going back to what's working, what's not working, how do I shift and realign? Everybody's heard of return on investment. The return, ROMI, is the return on marketing investment. What does that mean? What events do you do for marketing? How much does that cost you? And what are you getting from those events as revenue. Generally, at a minimum, marketing should get you qualified leads and at least 20 to 30% of your revenue in. But I'm also the believer that marketing should not really cost you. Marketing can actually be a source of revenue. So, for example, you see all these like coaches will say, hey, come for, this marketing event. We're doing a 1 day shop. They may offer it to you free, but then at the end of it, if you sign up today, you will get a free workshop, or it will be like a $200 discount or a 20% discount if you signed up today. For example, today we're going to offer one-on-one free sessions and demonstration of what dashboards you can build using these. So that eventually will also help get you revenue. So always think about, outside the box, right? You don't necessarily have to just stick with break even year one. Think about how you can actually go positive to get profit. Think about how your marketing event could be a minimal cost if you're doing a virtual Zoom or you're hosting an event. How can you get revenue or actually minimize your cost of marketing so your return on investment is higher? So with revenue streams, there are some key considerations. So revenue at the end of the day is money coming in. Revenue streams are the ways you're bringing in that revenue. So here's some context, right? If you go back to when we covered the customer persona and the customer segments and how to build a relationship, we talked about who you will charge. Now, we always end up focusing on the end customers. So for us, the end customers are, the small businesses, but we can also partner up with other companies. I'll give you an example. So we're working again with a nonprofit organization, and they were targeting their specific community for their donations. So what we are working with them is to broaden out the outreach, right? So not just look at the end users, but at their events, they could have sponsorship. When they have sponsorship, they could charge for that sponsorship. So that's an additional revenue stream. In the campaigns or the marketing reach outs, you could have advertisers, you could have partnerships that you build out. Some of the big software vendors actually charge their partners a fee for partnership. So these are things where you've got to think beyond who you will charge to say if your product or service model allows you to build additional revenue opportunities. So who is the first thing? The next is, what will you charge? So, for example, when I shared what we do as a company, we said we do managed services. Managed services means, you focus on your business. We will load your data, run your data, provide you reports, build custom dashboards. Now, we offer that same service to, and we do this for customer data, commissions, payroll. We do the service for enterprises, and that again are, millions or $1 billion in revenue, and we do this for small businesses. So we've got to have a flexible or a dynamic pricing model, because if we charged you what we charge them, that is like a no-brainer there, right? Like, I mean, that would not work. At the same time, it would not make sense to charge them $200 a month, because the scope, the services that we offer are different for what we do. Their volume of work is different. So build dynamic pricing. And again, it goes back to a very simple example. Look at what you're planning to achieve. Now, if you're selling through retailers, and again, Victor, I apologize, you're my favorite example to demonstrate as well. If he's working with the Costco's, right, their turnover is huge. So Walgreens, Costco, 7-Eleven, these are some top retail chain where if you spend a few months building the relationship, the turnover is so high that you may want to manage pricing. But if you're selling online for, B2C and there's individual, then you may want to price the product differently. So those are some considerations. So customer size, what is the volume you're trying to sell? What is, how long does it take? You may want to build in some pricing to meet the customer acquisition cost, right? Like it may take a lot of connects, it may take a lot of demonstration, it may take some POCs like we tend to do, and I'll talk about that when you're shipping, right? If you have two orders or they have subscription, or how do you manage? In services, we have support tiers, right? If we are doing everything for you, not you doing it yourself, it's a different pricing structure. Excuse me, versus if we are just providing you a platform, building a reports and you run them every day or once a week yourself, that's a different pricing structure. Do you want 24/7 support? Do you want only business day or all week, 7 days a week? So build in those models. Some clients are ready to sign up, right? So they are coming organically through websites, through these workshop sessions. Others, you may need to work with them on coaching. There's the concept of freemium. We offer free subscription for the first 2 months that builds up to a standard or a premium model. We may do a proof of concept. So those are some of the things you've got to think about, how you will engage and work your way and have that ready so that based on input, based on what you're seeing, you can realign accordingly. Now, how will you charge? So is this a one time they bought the product and it's done? Even with products, you can build a subscription model. I offer you a discount if you do, order every 4 weeks. Amazon, other, retailers you'll see online. Also, there is that thought of, are you looking for cash flow versus are you looking for revenue realization? So some of the clients that we work with will say, we will pay you in 60 days, and we will pay you your full invoice. Others will say, we will give you 30 days, but it will cost you 20% of the revenue, right? Earlier on, when I was a younger company, I would be more inclined to bring in the cash earlier. So you would say, hey, I'll take the early payment. Now I'm like, I can wait. Just give me the full and let's go with the terms. That's one thing. The other way it would work for entrepreneurs is to say, if you pay up front, I will give you a 10% discount on the annual cost or the product cost. If you pay over a period of time, then it is what it is, but that's not cash flow coming to you. So you need to think about that. Like, are you charging annually? Are you charging monthly? Are you looking for cash flow? Are you looking for full revenue realization? So some of those are key considerations. Now let's talk about revenue streams, right? So there are operational revenue streams. That is, what is your core product? So if your core product is, services, or let's say again going back to, vegan chips, right? Like that's your core product, but you could get additional revenue opportunities. The nonprofit that I was talking about, sponsorships. That's not their core. They are looking for a straight donation, but sponsorships is an avenue for some events, the big events that they could collect. They could rent out their place, a rent coming in temporarily. I'll tell you, as a company, whatever cash that comes in, I don't just have it sitting in the bank. I will even do a simple couple of months of CD. That's interest that I earn on that outside of what the company's bringing in, right? So think of ways to optimize your revenue stream. Think outside the box for that. When you look at recurring versus one time, right? To be able to build a recurring revenue stream is sort of like the best growth model. Rinse, repeat, evolve, rinse, and repeat. If you are a trainer that does in-person or virtual training, you could also record it and sell snippets of it in your knowledge base. So for example, when you like even for example, like a school or university, right? Like that program, if there are opportunities to say, hey, we have a knowledge base, we can, there's additional offering that can come from it. People may just sign up. You're getting a different target audience or the same, you're expanding your revenue stream, and those you could have snippets or clippets that you can leverage for a smaller fee for people that are not necessarily attending or signing for classes or signing up for the program. That's an additional revenue stream. So building recurring, always think of opportunities there. And even if you're a product company, subscriptions are your recurring revenue. Now, when you do things like that, it is also important, and we're going to talk about this when we talk about metrics, understanding your book of business, understanding your client list, and seeing what your retention and your churn rates are there. We're going to talk about those metrics in a little bit. But your revenue streams could be transactional, so sale, payment, right? Interest, you did an activity, you got a revenue for that CD for a period of time. Subscription, usage or licenses. Some people charge for using a system or licenses there. Service charge, right? Service, so consulting, partnership, developing training, doing managed support, like I talked about. Those are services that you could offer to build on top of anything else that you're selling. Now, projects are big one-time tasks. So let's say it's a marketing event. We are coordinating a gala for the nonprofit. We are doing these workshops with CSU, Fullerton, right? Promotions. I talk about one of the clients that actually did most of their business in OND, October, November, December, during the holiday season. So they looked at promotions they would execute during January through September to optimize sales. You may offer a free coaching, just like we are doing, advertising and sponsorships, affiliations. So tracking these revenue streams to make sure you're bringing in additional revenue. Now let's talk about some key revenue metrics. So first is book of business. It is knowing what your full list of customers are, right? So for example, it's not, you could do it over a period of time, you could do it over the lifetime of your business. That allows you to know who your customers are, what their buying patterns are. If you have not heard from them in a while, allows you to reach out to them. Book of business is really important because that's another thing that you will be looking at when you develop sort of your revenue realization models, your growth models. How it also helps. So for one of my clients, the big enterprise client that I was talking about, they were at Costco, they were at they are at Walgreens, the top CVS, the top retailers, but they were not at all the locations. So for example, in California, if there are, like let's just even take, there's 50 Costco's. If they know which Costco's they're at, they can tag and reach out to develop business in the remaining 5 or 10 they're not. If they know which states they're selling, they can reach out to other states and expand where they are not. So, understanding your customer data, understanding your book of business helps from a growth development perspective. The other thing it helps with is, you know, from managing your customer base. So when you look at year over year or month over month, are you losing certain types of customers? Are they churning? You're able to evaluate what's working, what's not working. Are you bringing in new business? You will find the companies often offer incentives for uh, retention of book of business year over year, not just new logos or new business. Those are also metrics that they pay bonuses on, but book of business, so that it's not a one and done deal, right? You got the customer, you're done. You don't realize that they are no longer with you over a period of time, or hey, you haven't bought from me in a while, can I send you my new product, would you like to be my test market for that? Building that relationship and engagement. And the industry metrics say that barely 18% of businesses, small businesses, focus on retention. They primarily focus on acquisition. So when we know that our costs of retention are much lower than our costs of acquisition, it makes sense to build a longer term relationship with the clients. Opportunities to keep the recurring revenue, but also opportunities to upsell. The next is the sales pipeline velocity. How long does it take for a lead or an opportunity to convert into a customer, a paying customer? What that means is, yes, it's a big account, it's going to take longer, or hey, for example, we will track who attended this session, how many signed up for the free coaching and the a couple of months of free on our platform. And then out of that process, how many were we able to convert? Where all are areas of improvement? What is the conversion rate? What is the attendance rate? Why didn't we necessarily, a lot of people signed up but didn't necessarily attend the session? How could we remedy that? Are we not reaching out enough to a broader pipeline? So those are the things. The other things are, in terms of your velocity, the speed, like to revenue realization, right? How can you do better? How long does it take me to reach out to the people that attended, to respond back and thank them for attending? Can I put together an email template, which we do, and send out thank yous? Do I want to do personal thank yous? So, making sure that you know the stages of your process, you have a process framework, being able to pull reports and say, I have an hour. Who all am I reaching out to? Oh, I look at this report. These are the 5 people. Let me do that now. So, accelerating your velocity to conversion is kind of important. Revenue retention, we've talked about it. Staying on top of your existing customers, making sure that you're tracking, if you are not seeing, like, let's say somebody ordered the product more, but in terms of volume, and their volume's decreasing, reach out to say, hey, what's going on? Understand the patterns of customer purchase. Can you help maintain either the same scope? Can you offer additional services? Looking at that. Revenue growth rate, right? So when you're putting together your revenue plan, when you're building a business, what's your growth rate? What are you planning? And then tracking it with a regular cadence, not just at the end of the year. Are you able, you had 5 new customer goals. Were you able to achieve this this month. If you know your pipeline velocity takes me 6 months to get a customer, I'm 6 months out, but have I done the necessary steps? I needed to reach out today to these five. Have I done that? I needed to follow up on the one-on-one sessions. Have I done that? Where are those customers? So that you can understand and follow up on your plan for the growth. So growth rate, is it 5%? Is it 10%? Is it doable? What does it mean in terms of your revenue, in terms of the customer acquisition? What's the pipeline look like? I often talk about the fact that going in, your conversion rate may not be high. So for example, let's say if your conversion rate is only 10%, that means, and I'll use my example, if my conversion rate is only 10%, I reach out to 100 customers, I only close 10. Well, when I started off, I would reach out to 1,000 to get to the 100 that I need to hit my growth rate, right? Because as a new business, your processes are not as refined or optimized. Over a period of time, you've got to look at the processes and say, I really do need to increase my actual rate of conversion, not just my volume of pipeline. So those are some of the things. Churn rate, right? When you are losing customers, are they in a certain geographical area, in a vertical, in an industry? Why are you losing them? What is it that you can do to retain your book of business or keep your revenue going? And obviously there is difference between revenue retention and customer retention, because you may still have the customer with you, but their revenue or the lifetime value may be less. It may decrease year over year. So revenue retention is a different metric from a customer retention, but both are equally important. So those are some of the metrics that are there. I'm going to leave this, here. I'm going to stop sharing. We would really appreciate it if you could click the links in the chat up on top or here, give us feedback on the session as well. And, if you're interested, we would love to, work with you on a one-on-one basis to give you a free session to talk about what you're doing and how we can help. So a lot of lessons learned in our experience that, may help speed up your time to market. So happy to help.
Thank you very much, Ritu.
Sorry, I have a question. Can I jump in, Travis?
Yeah, absolutely.
First of all, so many golden nuggets. Like, I really took a lot away and a lot of perspectives I hadn't considered. I have a question. So I'm actually in the process of creating a cash flow forecast.
Sure.
Our product is a few weeks from arriving, so specifically in the marketing bucket, right?
Yes.
And you talked about something that really stood out. So I have a couple of categories of expenses, some that I can attribute direct ROI, right? Like I can say influencer marketing. If I drop $500 based on some assumptions, I can make X. Paid ads, same thing. However, there is a bucket that I have a hard time attributing, but is important, which is content development. Copywriting, editing, graphic design. It's needed to move the business forward, but I can't directly attribute any ROI to it right away. How do I think about allocating? Like, I'm a bootstrap startup, so like how do I think about that budget, that amount?
So what you could do is you could look up sort of what the industry standard is for leads coming in specific to your product from perspective of digital online presence, and you could then predict like a volume or cost. So let's say if you said an average customer will buy, and I'm just making this up, if you're a B2C, $100 worth of product, and I'm just going to say, I'm going to assume that I get maybe, keep it low, 10 leads right? Like I'm just trying to simplify it. You can also do research, and I can look up some of those metrics for you and circle back with you on it as well. But
Thank you.
you and I definitely need to talk, because I want to run. Yeah, I took that Costco, Walgreens, those examples. I want to talk to you because I think there's opportunity there a lot, Victor, for some massive returns. It may take time to build those relationships.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Sure. And like I said, you're my favorite business example to demonstrate outside of my own business. So, I may owe you a thank you meal or coffee sometime.
Thank you.
So
yeah, we have that in common. Victor's also my favorite example to use.
yes, true.
Does anybody else have any other questions? We're all good? All right. Well, thank you very much, Ritu. And I put the links in the chat, so you could go check out Ritu's LinkedIn profile or website. You could set up a free session with her as well. And thank you all very much for attending this talk.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
Ritu.
Thank you, CSUF. Bye.